I took away my son's salary and forced him to buy his own food. But my entitled son bought alcohol instead of food, claiming I'm stealing his money and that he has no other option. Then he said he would take a gap year, so I refused to give back the money I've been holding as punishment to teach him a lesson. Now I'm regretting it. My son turned 18 in March. Since he was 15, I've taken about 20% out of his paycheck from his part-time job to put into a savings account specifically for his college fund. This wasn't some secret we told him up front before he even got hired at the grocery store. I explained it as a way to help him save without temptation. He agreed. He even thanked me once when he was 16, after he blew through one of his full paychecks on sneakers and gaming crap and realized he needed limits. That money has always been for college. Not for fun, not for a car, not for whatever random impulse a teenager might have. Just college. It's not like we can afford to fully fund his tuition ourselves, but I wanted him to have something set aside when the time came. I've always looked at it like helping him help himself. He never pushed back on it, never complained. That said, my son's not exactly a long-term thinking kind of kid. He's smart, sure, but has always been impulsive. He failed his driver's test twice because he didn't study the manual. He nearly got fired from his job at 16 for mouthing off to a manager over a schedule change. I think a lot of that's normal teenager stuff, but I'd be lying if I said he's always been easy. He's always had a quick fuse. Stubborn like his mom. Still, he's my kid. So when he turned 18 earlier this year, I told him I wanted to start easing him into more real-world responsibilities. Not kicking him out or making him pay rent. Nothing dramatic. Just a small thing. From now on, he'd buy his own food. He lives at home, rent-free. We cover the utilities, gas, laundry, internet, everything. All I asked was that he start buying and managing his own meals. That's it. It felt like a natural step. He works evening shifts, and more often than not, my wife and I would be finishing dinner by the time he even got home. Half the time he'd just order fast food anyway. So I said, okay, time to learn to budget for groceries or meals, figure it out. Low stakes, with a safety net. And at first, it was totally fine. No complaints. He grabbed frozen burritos, Hot Pockets, and a bunch of crap from Walmart, not what I'd call healthy, but he was doing it on his own. Then he started cooking eggs, rice, that kind of thing. It looked like he was getting the hang of it. But over the past month or two, something started shifting. He got more withdrawn. He was short with me when I'd ask him how work was. And I started noticing the kitchen was bare after some days, like he'd stopped restocking. Then last week, I came home from a late shift and saw him stumbling through the front door at midnight. Tried to act normal, but I could smell the booze on him from 10 feet away. I asked him straight up if he'd been drinking. He said no, just a long day. But he was slurring, eyes glassy. Dude wasn't even walking straight. I'm not new to this. Eventually, after I pushed a little, he admitted he'd had a beer or two after work. Then slipped and said, I got 2 bottles because they were on sale. I asked him what bottles, and he admitted he bought cheap vodka from the corner store. Now here's where things started unraveling. I asked him how he could afford that if he's supposed to be using his money for food. He got defensive fast, said something like, I barely have enough to eat because you're taking all my money anyway. That kind of pissed me off. I reminded him I wasn't taking anything. That money is still his, sitting in an account under his name, specifically set aside for when he goes to college this fall. I said this is exactly why I save it for him, so he doesn't blow it on alcohol or dumb crap. He didn't back down though. He snapped back. It's not your money to decide what I do with. I earned it. I said. You agreed to this system 3 years ago. You knew I was holding it for school. If you didn't want to save for your future, that's on you. He laughed and said, maybe I don't even want to go to college. Maybe I just want to eat. And that's where I lost my cool a bit. I told him, then maybe you don't get the money back. If you're not going to college, what's the point of me saving this for you? He looked stunned, like I'd slapped him. But I meant it. And I still mean it. I didn't take money from his paychecks for 3 years, just to hand it back to him, so he could spend it on liquor and Grubhub. He started yelling, saying I had no right to threaten him with money he earned, that I was stealing from him, and that I was controlling him like a kid. I told him he's not a kid anymore, he's 18, and this is what being an adult looks like. Decisions have consequences. You say you don't want college? Fine. Then the savings we built for college have no purpose. Why would I hand that over? The argument kept escalating. He accused me of never trusting him. I reminded him he was drunk, broke, and yelling at the person who's been trying to help him stay afloat. He stormed off, slammed the door to his room, and didn't come out the rest of the night. The next morning, he wouldn't even look at me. Just grabbed his keys and left. My wife asked what happened. I gave her the short version that he'd been drinking, blew up over the savings, and said he might not even go to college. She frowned but didn't say much. Later that day, she came into the garage while I was working on the mower and said, "Maybe we should just give him the money and let him decide." I told her flat out that's not happening. If he wants to act like an adult, fine. But part of being an adult is understanding that not everything is immediate. He made a deal. He's not 5. He doesn't get to scream and flip the rules. She didn't push it, but I could tell she wasn't fully on board. Still, she didn't argue either. That night, my son finally came home around 11. I asked him if he was still planning on college, or if that was just a throwaway threat. He said he didn't know. That he'd been thinking about taking a year off to figure things out. I asked if figuring things out meant working a part-time job, drinking cheap vodka, and sleeping until noon. He told me to F off. So I laid it down, clear and direct. If you don't go to college this fall, that money stays in the account. I'm not your ATM. That savings wasn't a blank check. It was for your education, and you agreed to it. If you want to back out of that, then I'm backing out of returning it. He tried to argue it was still his money. I said no, it's held for a purpose. If the purpose no longer exists, neither does the handoff. He doesn't get to reroute the agreement just because he's mad at me. I saved that money to help launch him forward, not to give him party cash or cover gas while he floats through gap year limbo. He told me I was being manipulative and said this was why he wanted to move out eventually, because I control everything. I said if by control he means I expect him to have some direction and not burn every dollar he earns, then sure, call it what you want. I'm not backing down. The last few days have been tense. He's civil but cold. He microwaves food in silence and leaves without a word. My wife's caught in the middle, she gets it. But she also hates the tension. I told her I'm not punishing him. I'm holding the line we've always had. I don't get it. We've never been harsh. We never asked him for rent. Never made him pay into bills. He's had freedom. He's had support. The only thing I've done is try to get him to think 2 steps ahead. Now he's acting like he's some kind of victim, like we blindsided him. Like I'm sitting on his money just to spite him. It's not true. If he comes to me tomorrow and says he's registering for the fall semester, I'll transfer every cent back to his account the same day. No questions asked. But if he wants to ditch college, float around, drink after work, and make no plan, I'm not just going to fund that. I'm not going to be the guy handing over thousands of dollars to an 18-year-old with zero direction and a bad attitude. That's not how this house works. He's legally an adult now. And that means this goes both ways. He can make his own choices. But I can decide what I'm willing to support. If that makes me the bad guy, fine. I'll take it. But I'm not going to pretend that giving him that money now, in this headspace, would be smart or responsible. He hasn't brought it up again. But I know it's coming. Probably the second his bank balance gets too low or something breaks. And I already know what I'm going to say. This money was saved with one purpose. And if that purpose is gone, so is the deal. Am I the a-hole for sticking to that? Comments. Comment 1. YTA. You're not teaching him budgeting. You're teaching him obedience disguised as guidance. You've been taking his wages for years, and now you're dangling that money over his head like a reward, only if he follows your plan, not his. He's 18. Either he's an adult or he's not. You can't treat him like an adult when it's convenient he buys his own food, manages his meals, and pays his way, but then act like a puppet master the rest of the time. And the moment he said he might not go to college, your response wasn't to talk it out or explore his concerns. You threatened to keep his money. Let me say this clearly. If you take someone's money with the promise of returning it, then don't. That's theft. Doesn't matter if you're the parent or not. The second he didn't perform how you expected, you changed the terms. That's controlling and manipulative. Comment 2. You said food is low stakes. You know what's not low stakes? Your son being hungry. You're patting yourself on the back for this little life lesson. But he literally told you he can only afford breakfast, and you responded by accusing him of poor budgeting. Then it comes out he's drinking cheap booze at night. That's not normal behavior. That sounds like someone depressed or stressed and not sure how to cope. And instead of asking what's going on, your response is, well, maybe you're not getting the money at all then. WTF? You skipped right past, "Let's talk," and went straight into threat mode. That's not a parenting win, that's a red flag. If your son is failing to thrive, that's not his failure. That's yours. You call this teaching responsibility? Nah, you're just punishing him for not turning out exactly how you imagined. Big difference. YTA. Big time. Comment 3. YTA. Let me get this straight, you've been taking your son's money under the premise that it's his, and that it'll be returned to him for college. But the moment he questions whether college is the right move for him, you decide. Well, maybe you don't get it back at all. You're not his financial planner. You're not a scholarship board. You're his father. That money was his earnings. You don't get to rewrite the rules after the fact because you're mad he might not follow your preferred life script. And don't act like this is about teaching responsibility. If you were actually teaching budgeting, you'd sit down with him, go over his pay stubs and expenses, and figure out where things are tight. Instead, you just toss him into the deep end and say, learn. No wonder he's drinking, it probably feels like he's failing no matter what he does. This isn't parenting, it's ego. And when he leaves your house, which will probably be sooner, now don't act surprised when he doesn't trust you with anything ever again. You made it clear that your support has strings attached. And one last thing, stop acting like food is some fun adult lesson. Letting your son go hungry while sitting on his own money isn't character building. It's cruel. Update. I thought I'd get a handful of replies telling me I was right. Instead, I got thousands of comments telling me I'm a controlling parent, a thief, and basically the villain of my own story. I read a lot of them. Some were ridiculous, but some actually made me think. A lot of people said I wasn't teaching him budgeting at all, just control. That hit harder than I expected. I'm still angry about the whole thing, but I'm not going to lie. Some of you were right. I didn't sit him down with his actual numbers. I didn't even know exactly what he was making after taxes, or what he was spending on gas and bus passes. I just assumed he'd figure it out. And yeah, I guess I jumped straight to threats when he said he might not go to college instead of having an actual conversation. That doesn't mean I think he's blameless. He's been working for 3 years, living rent-free, and still doesn't have his act together. He hid drinking from me, lied about it, then threw it in my face when I called him out. He hasn't once tried to have a calm talk about the money. It's always yelling and accusations. If he'd shown me his pay stubs and said, "Dad, I can't afford groceries," I would have listened. But he didn't. He went straight to beer and cheap vodka. That's on him. After the post blew up, my wife told me to read some of the top comments out loud. She said, "If this were someone else writing, what would you think?" I hated that question because the honest answer is I would have thought the parent was going too far. That stung. She didn't say, "You're wrong," directly, but she clearly thought I was. She also said she was tired of being caught in the middle. 2 nights ago, I called my son. I told him I'd been thinking about our fight. He rolled his eyes but sat down. I said I was willing to return the money immediately, but I wanted him to understand how we got here. He crossed his arms and said, "Just give me my money." I replied, "You'll get it, but listen first." I told him I started saving it because I didn't want him to be 18 with nothing. That it was supposed to be a launch pad, not a leash. That I lost my temper when he said he might not go to college because it felt like all the planning had been for nothing. I admitted threatening not to return it was the wrong way to handle that moment. I also told him drinking and lying aren't how adults solve problems. I wasn't going to pretend he was perfect either. He didn't say much. He just kept looking at the floor. Finally he said, "I'm taking a gap year. I'm not ready for college." I asked what the plan was for the gap year. He said he'd keep working and save for his own apartment. That was it. No bigger vision, no school plans after, no trade program. Just figure it out. I felt my stomach drop. I told him flat out that if he blows through this money, there's no round 2. I'm done. He nodded. Didn't even look up. I went to the office and transferred every cent of that savings into his account while he sat there. A little over $7,000. I came back, showed him the confirmation, and said, "It's yours now. Don't say I never did anything for you." He mumbled, "Thanks," and went back to his room. The next day he took off work early, went to the bank, and opened his own account. He's moving most of it there so I can't see it anymore. He's still living here for now, but it feels like he's already halfway gone. We don't talk much except for basic stuff. My wife keeps saying at least it's calmer, but to me it feels like the whole thing's broken. I'm angry at him for being so cold about it. I'm angry at myself for handling it so badly. And honestly, I'm angry at Reddit. Yeah, some of you had good points. But a lot of you also egged him on. I still believe in the principle of what I was trying to do. Saving for him was not wrong. Trying to get him to budget was not wrong. Where I screwed up was turning it into a power struggle. And where he screwed up was thinking he could drink, lie, and throw everything in my face, but still get sympathy. We both handled it badly. But I'm the parent, so the fallout lands on me. Now he has the money. I'm out of it. No conditions, no strings. I told him this was my last parental financial intervention. From here on out, he's on his own. If he wants to take a gap year, fine. If he wants to blow it on a car or rent or travel, fine. But I'm done playing banker and safety net. He's an adult now. Sink or swim. My wife says maybe this is what it needed to be a clean break. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a win. It feels like watching a bridge you built for years start to crumble. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe it's his. Probably both. Either way, the money's out of my hands. He's got his autonomy now. I hope he uses it wisely. But I'm not betting on it. Comments. Comment 1. You can say, we both handled it badly, all you want. But read between your own lines. He didn't even want to talk to you anymore. That's not normal teenage rebellion, that's someone who's done. You spent 3 years managing his money like a guardian, then turned around and weaponized it the first time he challenged your authority. That wasn't a conversation. That was emotional blackmail. Of course, he's moving his money. Of course, he's planning to leave. You trained him to expect that any sign of independence would come with punishment. He's protecting himself. And yeah, Reddit probably gave him some fuel, but don't pin this on strangers on the internet. The problem started long before he opened your post. You're mad that he doesn't thank you. But respect and gratitude don't grow in a house where love comes with strings attached. The bridge didn't start to crumble. You blew it up. Comment 2. I'm angry at Reddit. Might be the most ridiculous part of this entire saga. You're blaming internet strangers for your son finally standing up to you after you tried to hang his own wages over his head like a treat for good behavior. Bro, come on. You sound like the guy who ruins his own marriage and then blames her friends for putting ideas in her head. No, she just finally had someone else telling her she wasn't crazy. You didn't hand him a life lesson. You handed him a power trip. And now you're surprised he doesn't want to be around you. You're lucky he even sat down to talk at all. Also, side note, a lot of people drink a little when they're broke, exhausted, and stuck in a power imbalance they can't escape. That vodka wasn't his downfall, you were. He's gone, man. Emotionally, he's already packed up. And instead of asking what he needed, you asked why he wasn't performing for you the way you wanted. YTA. Still. Just with cleaner hands now. Post from OP's son. Throwaway because my dad stalks my online accounts. I'm 18M. A couple of weeks ago, someone sent me a link to his post. The details lined up exactly with my life. Same ages, same story, same setup. It was him. My dad. Reading it felt like getting punched in the gut. I've been living in his house my whole life. From the outside, people think he's a strict but responsible dad. Inside, it's been a prison. He controls everything. He shuts my mom down anytime she tries to parent me. She'd try to step in when he was being harsh, and he'd snap at her in front of me. I'm the parent here, not you. He never hit me, but the control was constant. He isolated us from extended family. Always had an excuse why we didn't visit. And talked trash about my uncles and grandparents, so I wouldn't bond with them. He's also what I now recognize as narcissistic. Everything's about him. If I achieve something, it's because of his guidance. If I fail, it's because I don't listen. If I try to express feelings, he cuts me off mid-sentence to lecture me about accountability. My mom stopped arguing years ago. She'd just quietly tell me later she disagreed with him, but didn't want to fight. The money thing started when I was 15. He said he was saving a percentage of my paycheck for college. I didn't really understand at the time, and I trusted him. But he also took control of my mom's money too. She works part-time. And every time she tried to buy me something or slip me extra cash, he'd demand to see receipts or balance the household budget. I didn't move out when I turned 18 because of my mom. I was scared to leave her there by herself, so I stayed. I started paying for my own food because he said it would teach me budgeting. The truth is, I couldn't afford groceries most weeks after he took his cut. I'd skip meals. Some nights I'd drink cheap beer or vodka because it was cheaper than a meal and it dulled the stress. I'm not proud of that, but that's where I was. When I told him maybe I wasn't ready for college this fall, he flipped. Said I might not get the money back at all. That was the last straw for me. And for the record, he didn't decide to give me my money back because of Reddit like he claimed in his update. He gave it back because I told him if he didn't, I was going to the cops. I had already spoken to someone at legal aid about wage theft. My mum finally backed me. She told him, "Give him the money or I'll take him to my sister's and we'll both be gone." That's why he caved. Not because of some noble moment of reflection. When he transferred the money, he tried to act like he was still in control, giving me a speech about responsibility while clicking buttons on his laptop. He made it sound like he was doing me a favor. He wasn't. It was mine. A week after that, things at home blew up again. He started laying out new rules for me staying there, doubling the rent, making me pay half the bills, adding ridiculous terms like cleaning fees and internet usage, as if I were some boarder in a dorm. It was obviously a way to punish me for standing up to him. My mum told me to leave, so I did. She packed her things too. We moved into a small apartment together. Now it's just him in the house. Isolated. Alone. He did that to himself. For years he shut down my mum's voice, micromanaged my life, and used money as a weapon. Now the people he controlled are gone. I've been out for about a month now. I'm working full-time, saving my money, and eating like a normal person again. I don't plan on going back. Not for holidays, not for birthdays. I'm not closing the door forever, but I'm not walking back into that house to be lectured or manipulated either. He's had chance after chance. And Dad, if you're reading this, here's my message to you. You made your bed. You built a house where control was more important than connection. Where appearances mattered more than our actual lives. Where my mum's opinions didn't count. Where my feelings were a nuisance. Where every good thing I did was because of you and every bad thing was my fault. You took my money and then acted like giving it back was a gift. It wasn't a gift. It was mine. You're sitting in that house alone, now because you chose control over family. I'm not coming back until you understand that. Maybe not even then. You once told me, decisions have consequences. This is yours. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.